Hi, my name is Corey Schumacher, and my two words are empty and satisfied. And this is my story. If you were to tell me that I would be doing full time Christian ministry like I do today when I was in high school, I would have laughed in your face. Because when I was in high school, the last thing that I thought or cared about was God. And even though I was raised in a church going family off and on, uh, baptized at age 12, religion just never really clicked with me. And I had this vague sense that God existed. I believed that I'd go to heaven probably when I died, but I never really understood how those things made any difference in my life on a day to day basis. So all I really cared about, frankly, was just living for myself and pursuing my own agenda. And by the time I got to high school, that agenda was mostly just finding ways to make myself happy. I was pursuing pleasure. By the time I was 14 years old, I was introduced to the world of drugs and alcohol and the party scene. So I started doing that. Eventually, when I was 16, I had a car and a job, which meant I could do those things much more freely. So, kind of evolved from just doing those things on the weekend to where I was going to school, going to work high. It became not just a hobby on the weekends, but it became a day to day lifestyle. And I learned that it wasn't just about having a great time anymore, but pursuing pleasure through drugs and alcohol, especially, really was my way of escape, my way of coping with life. As time went on, I got more and more selfish, more and more reckless. I was lying to my parents, sneaking around, just doing whatever I could to make sure I was accomplishing that goal of pursuing pleasure. During this time, all I was really doing was trying to fill an emptiness in my life that I didn't even know was there. Well, during that time, there was a girl who kind of introduced me to a group called Young Life, and I went to check it out of curiosity. I get there, and they kind of convinced me to come to their week-long summer camp up in Minnesota, and their hook was it'd be the best week of my life or my money back. That was the promise. So I kind of took the bait, and I went on that premise, and I get there, and even though I went with wrong motives, once I arrived, everything started to change, and I started hearing things that I had never heard before from the speaker. He started explaining that actually Christianity is not just about going to heaven when I die, but it's about experiencing eternal life here and now on earth. And that even though my sins separated me from God through my disobedience and sin, that He still loved me. That He sent His only Son, Jesus, to live the perfect life that I should have lived but didn't. Then to die a sacrificial death in my place on the cross. And not only that, but to rise from the dead 3 days later so that whoever would believe in Him and trust in Him would have forgiveness of their sins and eternal life. That was all news to me. It was like I never heard that before, and the light bulb went on. And I thought, man, this is what I want for my life. This is what I need. And when the end of the week rolled around, I went to my Young Life leader, Mike, and he led me through this really simple prayer so that I could receive what Jesus had to offer and start a new life as a Christian. And I'll tell you, it wasn't the most dramatic prayer or anything like that, but it was the most life-changing and important decision I've ever made in my life. And came back from that week totally transformed. And honestly, there were some pretty deeply ingrained habits that took a long time for them to slowly fade away. But one thing that I experienced instantly was something I never had before, which was true joy and satisfaction. A joy that ran deeper than just pursuits of pleasure and instant gratification that I was seeking after all those years. And now, 13 years later, looking back on that, the irony, it's so funny to me because all that time I was pursuing pleasure after pleasure after pleasure, and all it would do would just leave me feeling empty. Once I started pursuing God, that's when satisfaction came. And today, I still find satisfaction and joy in knowing and worshiping God. And that's what I plan on doing for the rest of my life. And that's the story of how I went from being empty to satisfied. And those are my two words.